Hello first grade, welcome to day 4 of Flat Stanley. After reading today, we are going to answer some questions about the problem that Flat Stanley and his friends are facing. So we left off, I had stopped on page 24. And so let's keep reading. Yin whispered into Stanley's ear, "Great-grandmother Yin would like to wish you luck before you begin your training." Stanley was about to walk over, but Yang stopped him with a hand on his shoulder. The ancient woman slowly straightened her back, raised her shaking hands from the back of a chair, and launched herself into the air. She flipped onto the nearest table, and then did handsprings from one table to another, all the way around the room. She even failed to disturb a single cup of tea before landing right in front of Stanley and giving him a toothless smile. Stanley was stunned. The old woman giggled, grabbed him by the sides of his stomach, and shook him. He couldn't help laughing as his head and feet swung back and forth through the air, and then suddenly his body made a low, rhythmic sound as the air rushed around him. Stanley didn't know his body could do that. Yin and Yang and their family roared with laughter. Everybody waited to fill their plates until Yin and Yang's grandparents and great-grandparents were served. Then, as all of the relatives chattered and slurped and ate, Stanley carefully adjusted his chopsticks and tried to pick up a piece of food. Instead, one of the chopsticks tilted like a seesaw, and the piece landed in Yang's soup with a splash. Yang put down his own chopsticks. "It is time for Turnip Cake's first lesson," he announced. Yin nodded in agreement. "Let's start with an ancient feat of balance and skill." Stanley leaned closer. "Holding a pencil," finished Yang. Stanley rolled his eyes. "I already know how to do that," he said, holding one of his chopsticks like a pencil and moving it up and down. "You are very skilled," teased Yang. "Now do you see the cradle formed by your thumb and first finger?" asked Yin. "That is where the other sleeping chopstick lies its head. Its leg rests on your fourth finger. Look, it does not move. It only sleeps." Stanley slipped the second chopstick into its cradle. Lifting his bowl, Stanley used the first chopstick to trap a piece of food against the one resting below it. He carefully lifted the food to his mouth and dropped it in. "It worked!" Stanley immediately tried again. "Turnip Cake learns fast," Yang commented, as Stanley flung one thing after another into his mouth. Stanley tried lots of new things: rice with meat cooked in a leaf, spicy pork and vegetables, even turnip cake, which was surprisingly jiggly. But his favorite dish of all was a local specialty, byung noodles, which were almost as flat and wide as he was. As Yin and Yang's aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, and great-grandparents filed by his table to say goodbye, Stanley was so full he almost didn't feel flat. He couldn't understand a word anyone said, but they all seemed very friendly. Great-grandmother Yin made music by shaking his sides one more time before hobbling out the door. So Yin, Yang, and Stanley were the only ones left. It was getting late, and Stanley was tired. But then, out of nowhere, a squinting old man with 3 long white hairs sprouting from his chin appeared at the table. "Hello, young ones," wheezed the man in English. "Hello, Flat and Stanley." "Hello, Great Uncle Yang," said Yin. "We did not see you." Okay, so after reading today, I want you to look at your worksheet. And question 1 says, what is the problem in the text and why is it a problem? So thinking about the few pages that we read, what was the problem in there? And it could have been just a small problem. It doesn't have to be a big problem. Question 2, how did the characters solve the problem? Use the text evidence. So that means use words from the text and examples to help support your answer. And 3, how would you have solved the problem if you had to do it differently? Or maybe you would do it the same, but maybe you can explain why their solution was a good one.